Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather, 17th day of October 2020. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. And up first, we've got, as usual, the hazardous weather graphics, and there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere. The high wind warnings we had out yesterday expired earlier today for the Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island earlier on, and then up along the northwest coast. Still pretty windy up there. Still have some localized pretty strong wind gusts going on at the usual places like Cape Lisburne, for example, seeing gusts, I believe, gusts to 64 miles per hour this afternoon at mid-afternoon, and those will gradually come down today or this evening and into tomorrow. Otherwise, again, no watches, warnings, advisories out. Looking good in the Aleutians, Bering Sea, all the way across the Panhandle. Satellite imagery showing the moisture kind of driving eastward, the stronger jet to the south, and then higher pressure ridging over the central interior, everything, the entire pattern shifting from west to east. And but you can see the low pushing into the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay there, kind of and spreading the clouds into Kodiak Island, breaking through underneath. With the ridging right across central interior today, making for the nice day, and mostly clear skies, light winds, cool temperatures. Cirrus on the increase there. You can see a band there in the central interior, and then just some wispy clouds into Cook Inlet. And then they thicken up out to the west, but precipitation pretty light, except for a couple of exceptions. Just a few hundredths of an inch, water equivalent, Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area. And winds kind of brisk there in advance of the front along the southwest coast, and still windy. Tin City seeing gusts 51 miles per hour this afternoon, and Kotzebue about 40 miles per hour or so, and actually 44 miles an hour at Kotzebue. Let me get my cheat sheet up here where I can see it better. No, I'm seeing gusts 40 miles an hour, as well as off to the east there, Delta Junction, seeing gusts to 45 miles an hour, kind of trending down a little this afternoon. But with higher pressure pulling off to the east there, got that gradient going that kicks the winds up there along that valley. Otherwise, away from there, winds are much lighter. And the southeast coast, upper level trough, finally pulling all the shower activity pretty much out of the area there. Really no precipitation I could find in the last 12 hours, even down over the southern areas. And if any occurred, it was pretty light and scattered. And winds on the increase, though, drier air, a little chillier temperatures pouring into the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay areas with gusts to about 50 miles an hour at Eldred Rock in the Panhandle. So pretty good northerly flow there in Lynn Canal. And that'll be pushing dry air southward as that upper level trough continues to slide off to the southeast and the higher pressure ridge shifts eastward. And out over the Bering Sea, looks like a fair amount of clearing, not much in the way of any storminess. Pribilof's in a dead zone there, as well as the eastern Aleutians, and actually Nunivak Island over to Adak and Atka. A little breezy, though, seeing winds Alaska Peninsula 25 to 35 miles an hour, and but nothing too terribly strong. And then some troughiness out to the west, farther west of the Pribilofs, with some shower activity that's mostly north of the western Aleutians. And rolling that again, you can see not really a big push to the east, although I've only got a few frames here on that, but the big push there is mostly across Kodiak Island and the jet to the south, and the higher pressure kind of holding the moisture back to the west a little bit. But the system having a weakening effect on the high, and the high having a weakening effect on the low, and you see the high center now pulling off to the east there, well into the Northwest Territories this afternoon, and then some moisture there again kind of linking up with that upper level trough, and that kind of holding the clouds in. But again, not much in the way of rain there. A little over, it's kind of overdone there over the southern southeast coast. Clouds definitely, but an area of rain, not so much maybe over Dixon Entrance. You're kind of right on the edge over the southern areas is what I'm trying to say. And tightening gradient there with the high shifting into the Yukon. So you had those brisk north winds there over the inside water, especially in Lynn Canal and those normally windier areas. And out in the west there, the front pushing some light scattered areas of precipitation on in. Temperatures up near 40, all the way up to the Seward Peninsula there with those southerly wind gusts. And then kind of a mixed precipitation pattern there. Really light over the west central interior areas, if any occurred at all there, and the northwest coast. Strong winds Cape Lisburne. Even Kotzebue seeing wind gusts, as I mentioned, 45 miles an hour, and Nome about 40 miles an hour. And for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, precipitation on the light side, generally at 5 to 15 hundredths of an inch, the exception being Cape Newenham, which had 2/3 of an inch of rain, about 0.65 hundredths in the last 12 hours. And that was the exception as opposed to the rule, and light precipitation down across areas of Bristol Bay. And farther out to the west, again, those troughs bringing some moisture in, and will be dropping into the Aleutians and then swinging eastward. For tonight, again, that troughiness out there brings an increasing chance of showers and areas of light rain to the Pribilofs on down. That'll drag across the central Aleutians. So really nothing, no significant weather going on there, just some passing showers. And winds on the light side as compared to what they could be if a significant storm was out there, but pretty mainly westerly, generally, give or take there, west-northwest or west-southwest, but something like 15 to 25, maybe gusts 30 or so, 35 with along the trough axis there crossing the central Aleutians. Lighter winds clearing eastern Aleutians, dry tonight, and same thing for the Alaska Peninsula into the southeast Bering, pushing into Bristol Bay. So a chance of showers of any type, rain or snow, rain or just plain snow, but they'll all be light. Kenai Peninsula, of course, down there will be Cook Inlet, mostly in the form of rain, what does fall, and then a mixture up over the interior to just plain light snow. Stays dry over the eastern interior and on up to the North Slope and Arctic coast areas, dry and chilly, temperatures near or just below zero in some areas and a little above. Much milder, though, back to the west with the southerly flow. And the Panhandle clearing out from north to south gradually, but with that system hanging up over the Queen Charlotte, slowly pushing eastward. A risk of showers, definitely for Norton Sound. Dixon entrance may catch Heidelberg, maybe Metlakatla and Nets, possibly just a risk of a shower, but the threat does exist. And then moving on to tomorrow for Sunday, we've got, again, weak trough there, that remnants of that system coming eastward, and kind of a weak high pressure building in behind as the high continues to weaken to the east of that over the Northwest Territories. So maybe some light snow showers pushing into the central interior. Probably a pretty good chance there will be, but they'll be quite light. Don't look for anything too measurable. Mixed as you get down toward the Kenai Peninsula and Talkeetna Mountains. Of course, any elevation at all, that'll be in the form of snow. Anything falls in Prince William Sound, form of rain, but quite light again, trying to emphasize that. And still a trough keeps a chance of showers over the southern southeast coast, dry in the central interior, risk of a shower or two up along the north coast of the Panhandle. Kodiak Island, variably cloudy, risk of an isolated shower or two. Can't get any vaguer than that. And for the Alaska Peninsula, chance of showers with a weak trough pushing eastward, weakening as it approaches the coastline, but still holding together enough for a chance of light precipitation, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast. St. Lawrence Islands, close enough to that low center for a chance of moisture there. And the Bering Sea, you got high pressure developing over the western Bering. It builds actually quite rapidly. Tomorrow night, and by Thursday or by Monday afternoon, we've got 1,035 millibar center there, and that high center dominates the central and eastern Bering Sea, northward to the Bering Strait. And otherwise, upper level disturbance, chance of snow or snow showers, central interior, Copper River Basin, Talkeetna Mountains to the Wrangels, and kind of basically dry along the North Gulf Coast, risk of a shower or two, for Cape St. Elias over toward Yakutat. And the northern Panhandle, mostly cloudy, chance of showers. Southern areas, maybe a chance of clearing with less of a shower threat. And the Arctic coast, basically dry. And the Bering Sea and the Aleutians especially, look for light winds and some sunshine with the southwest flow keeping the moisture way out there to the west and directing it up to the Russian Far East. As far as lows go for tonight, either side of zero there over toward the eastern interior and the border. 5 below to 5 above, and mid-teens for the central Tanana Valley. course, with the southerly flow becoming milder and way above freezing. 35 to 40 for the low. St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, southwest coast. Pribilof's near 40 for the Aleutians. And mid-20s to mid-30s for the Panhandle. Some areas even dropping into the upper teen, like Yakutat. And for the highs tomorrow, mid to upper 30s, so sitting in Matanuska Valley, northern Cook Inlet, to mid-40s, southern Kenai Peninsula, and lower 40s, northern Panhandle, near 50 in the south. In the teens and 20s, northeast interior, mid-20s in the Arctic coast, 40 to 45 along the southwest coast, mid to upper 40s, Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Lows the following morning, a little milder, even over the eastern interior, generally looking at 5 to 15 for the lows there at the coldest areas, and eastern Arctic coast. Lower to mid-20s for the central coast, and again in the upper 20s to mid-30s on the west side, south central Alaska, basically in the 20s, lower 30s along the coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Sunday morning. Some IFR there on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Otherwise, not too bad. North slope, central western Arctic coast into the central eastern Brooks Range, on down the eastern interior, central interior, across the Copper River Basin, eastern Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, Panhandle, all VFR, and then moisture coming into the west. Widespread IFR pushing into the southwest interior on up to Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, northern Bering Sea, through the strait to the northwest coast, and then improving farther out to the south and southwest, and actually from the Alaska Peninsula, VFR conditions, Kodiak, VFR, Fox Island, Central Aleutians, marginal, and then back to the VFR from Amchitka westward to the Komodorskis. For the afternoon, Sunday, next system pushing some lower conditions in across Shimianat too, otherwise pretty good widespread VFR for the Aleutians, all the way until you get to about Falls Pass, marginal VFR there. Eastern Bering Sea, IFR, St. Lawrence Island, through the Strait, western Seward Peninsula, just clipping the way it looks at this point in time, Point Hope, with marginal VFR pushing right up the Yukon River and Kuskokwim Valley areas into the central interior, southward across Central Alaska Range, Western Alaska Range, and most of South Central Alaska. Some VFR, though, for northern Cook Inlet. Most of the Matanuska and part of the Susitna Valley, so not too bad, and otherwise marginal for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. And IFR from Yakutat on down toward along the southeast coast there, marginal over toward the border, and marginal for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. For the day on Monday morning, you've got, again, IFR near the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coasts, or not really too far inland, but it looks like there's a chance over the Brooks Range, and the VFR zone kind of shrinking there, but holding over the Yukon Flats, eastern Brooks Range, 40-mile country, down Northway Toke, eastern Copper River Basin. Lots of IFR, though, into the central Alaska Range, spilling up to possibly Nenana, southward across the Susitna Valley and western Copper River Basin, into northern Cook Inlet and the Matanuska Valley. And then south of Turnagain Arm, marginal VFR, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, including Prince William Sound and the Panhandle. VFR for Kodiak Island, but Fognak in the marginal zone, Alaska Peninsula, VFR, same for the Fox Islands, and right on the edge of the marginal VFR, St. Paul, St. George, Adak and Atka, VFR, and about just west of Adak on out, marginal. And for the afternoon Monday, VFR, Kiska Island eastward to up the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay into Kodiak Island with some marginal VFR east side and south. VFR Cook Inlet, areas of marginal VFR over the interior with even less VFR areas there, specifically Cook Inlet and the Susitna Valley, and it looks like the Kobuk and portion of the Koyukuk Valleys, otherwise marginal VFR North Slope, and Brooks Range, some IFR kind of grazing the eastern and central and western Arctic coast to St. Lawrence Island, and lots of VFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and the Panhandle looks VFR. Passes, Hanatuvik and Adigan, both VFR throughout the day tomorrow, and Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR becoming marginal. Improvement also for rainy, lowest conditions in the morning, marginal VFR in the afternoon, windy, marginal at times, mostly marginal through the day. Isabel, VFR, trending toward marginal in the latter part of the afternoon. Metasta stays VFR. And Tanita, possible marginal conditions, eastern entrance, otherwise not bad, VFR through the pass. Portage, marginal VFR. Chilcoot and White, look for a pretty good downturn in conditions, VFR to start, IFR to finish. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, kind of a warm pocket, barely holding over the Arctic coast there, but more the actual zone there, Bering Sea across southern Alaska. And for icing, we've got a couple of batches, one moving through and beginning to exit the southern panhandle there, another one just off the coast. Light to isolated moderate mixed icing types or rime with pretty isolated considerable moderate and kind of an elevated zone there off the southwest coast. And as far as the jet stream goes, weak upper level low pushing across the Kenai Peninsula, keeping the jet to the south of Kodiak Island and into the southern panhandle, then taking a dive to the southeast. And at 9,000 feet, 35 to 40 knot northwest winds there, central eastern Aleutians, light everywhere else. 3,000 feet, Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, 35 to 40 knot winds. Maybe some 30 knot winds there in the Point Hope, Cape Lisburn vicinity, otherwise light and variable elsewhere. Turbulence, not too bad, some areas there along the west coast, light to very isolated moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, west central Aleutians, again, nothing too serious.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined again by Eric Stevens of GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us again tonight.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks, Eric. And we've been talking about the complex gathering of information from satellites, looking down on the surface of the planet, and some of those orbits around the planet work for Alaska, and some of them don't. There's a lot of challenges with those. How can we get better imagery for the poles and specifically for Alaska?
Right. Well, today we're going to talk about a very interesting kind of satellite orbit that has potential to be real helpful for the high latitudes.
Okay.
Especially us here in Alaska, Canadians, Russians, Norwegians will all be interested in this. The satellites are not in orbit yet. Now the future is uncertain, but it's possible, and if this happens, it will be wonderful for Alaska. It's called the highly elliptical orbit.
Oh, that sounds
it's interesting. Yeah. And I think first, to help our discussion, we should get back to some of Kepler's laws and how do satellites work.
Sure.
Kepler's first law, an orbit of a planet around a sun or a weather satellite around the Earth is not necessarily a circle, it's an ellipse.
Okay.
And the highly elliptical orbit takes advantage of this aspect. We're going to put the Earth in one of the ellipse and then stretch one of the foci of the ellipse and then stretch that ellipse out real far to make it highly elliptical.
And the foci is that bend part of the end of the ellipse. If you're going to stretch out a rubber band, that would be the center, kind of the stretchy part.
Yes.
Ends. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Kepler's second law says that the closer something is to the thing that it's orbiting, the faster it goes.
Okay.
We see this in the solar system, that Mercury flies around the sun real fast. Jupiter, much slower. Jupiter's further away, it's slower. Mercury's closer in, it's faster. This happens with weather satellites too. Even satellites like the International Space Station, it's pretty close to the Earth. It goes around the Earth in only 90 minutes. That thing is moving. It's only 250 miles away. So how can we take advantage of these two aspects of Kepler's laws of motion to get better weather surveillance of Alaska? And this highly elliptical orbit is going to be the approach. So we have with us today our friendly planet Earth and our simulated satellite, the lid off of this salt shaker
like
here.
Sputnik there. Yeah.
There it is. It's shiny, it's metal, it's space worthy. And what we want to be able to do is, could you have a satellite hover over the top of the world, up over Alaska? You can't really do that. Geostationary satellites have to be over the equator.
Okay.
So how could we almost solve this? And this is the tricky part. Maybe should we tilt the Earth
Tilt
over?
the other, focus on the pole. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
So here we have the northern side of the planet, and we're going to trace out the orbit of a satellite with this salt shaker lid here. Now imagine a highly elliptical orbit. So let's put the Earth in one of the foci of the ellipse, and we'll have an imaginary foci out here. So the satellite will not go in a circle around the Earth, but will be in this long strung out ellipse. So the satellite will go...
Kind of like a racetrack.
Yes, there you go, like a racetrack. So it's an oval elliptical shape like that. And notice now that when the satellite's over here, we've got a nice view of the northern hemisphere around. There's Alaska, Russia, Canada, Greenland, all there. So that's the ellipse aspect of an orbit, Kepler's first law. The second law saying that when you're further away as a satellite, you go slower. And this we can take real
okay.
advantage of. Because the way this orbit works, when the satellite goes over Antarctica here,
Right.
it's going to be close to the Earth. It's
Okay.
going to be moving, whoosh, goes on by. And then as it comes out here, it will slow down. This increases what is known as the dwell time. The satellite will just hang here looking for hours at Alaska and the high Arctic. And then eventually it will come around and it will accelerate and whiz around the South Pole and then come back and hang here for a while because it's further away from the planet. It goes slower.
Yeah.
It has to. That's the laws of motion. And such like that, repeating.
Wow.
Now, the real important way to make this work is you have to have two satellites. So that while one is whipping around the pole, you've got the other one out here, and they work as a team. You could then get a series of images of Alaska that can be almost from a a constant frame of reference.
Right.
And you can loop them together to make movies. You can take a picture every 10 minutes, say, of Alaska, and then loop it, playing it at several frames a second. You could see the clouds whiz on by. You know, the Weather Channel, weather broadcasters in the lower 48 especially can show these movie loops from the geostationary satellites. In Alaska, we've never really been able to do that very well, especially in the higher, most northern parts of the state, because those geostationary satellites are over the equator. It's not a good view. And this highly elliptical orbit whipping around the South Pole and then dwelling up here would be a way for us to get that constant frame of reference and do really good weather surveillance over the Arctic, seeing where those storms are, where they're going. Nothing quite like a movie loop of the weather in time to really illustrate what's important, what's going on.
And compared to what we have right now, we just have small windows or snapshots of what's going on with the polar orbiters. We don't have that long range view that's looking top down to give us that complete motion picture that helps us understand so much of the atmosphere at this
There's
point.
so many different kinds of satellites. Each has their advantage. Each is important, and the highly elliptical orbit satellite will also fit into that scheme. It's a nifty idea to solve an Alaskan challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. And again, kind of a satellite dream of the future to come. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. We really appreciate the information. And if you'd like to learn more about what Eric does at GINA, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we invite you to visit the web address that you see on your screen there. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, continuing to increase, obviously, kind of a noticeable increase there all along the Arctic coast with those temperatures down in some cases close to zero today, but warming up, especially on the west side there with the southerly flow and the increase. And the main ice field there looks like a shade closer southward, but still a fair distance off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for the coastal water forecasts, east-northeast 15 knots for the south coast of the Panhandle. Tomorrow see 6 to 7 feet. East to southeast at 10 for the north coast. And winds much lighter tomorrow after the brief windy conditions that are currently going on there. They'll be down to north at 10. 2-foot seas, light southeast breeze for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, north 15. And then for Monday, south at 10. For Clarence Strait and the central northern inside waters, very, very light winds, 5 to 10 knots, probably variable directions, and seas pretty slight. South coast, 10 to 15 out of the west. North coast, west at 10, 5 to 7 foot seas. And for Cook Inlet, north to northeast breeze at 10 knots with seas somewhere around 3 feet. Northeast 10 for Kamishak Bay, with 3 foot seas. Barren Islands and western North Gulf Coast, northeast winds 15 knots, east 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and variable to north, light winds for Prince William Sound. That'll continue into Monday as well with seas pretty slight, 2 feet for the Sound. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, light winds out of the north, 10 knots, northwest 20. Western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands with 6 foot seas, small craft advisories, Kamishak Bay, northwest 25 with 5 foot seas, and Cook Inlet, northerlies 10 to 15 knots. Kodiak Island, west-northwest 15 tomorrow. 3 to 6 foot seas, and the Alaska Peninsula, Bering Sea side, southwest 20 knots, small craft advisories due to the 8 foot seas. Otherwise, the Pacific side, west at 20 knots, and Bristol Bay, southwest at 10 with seas at 4 feet. Small craft advisories in store for Bristol Bay out of the west at 25 knots for Monday with 8 foot seas. And the Alaska Peninsula northwest, 20 to 25 knots with the 25 knot winds on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, up the east side of Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, west wind 25 knots, but only 15 knots out of the west for Shelikof Strait. And for the Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, west-southwest 25 knots, Unmak Island, west 20 to 25 knots, and AKwx, northwest 20 to 25. Amchitka Island, small craft advisories, northwest 25, 9-foot seas, and Shimia, Attu Island, Kiska, west at 20. They turn south at 25 knots from Kiska to Shimia on Monday, south 20 knots, Amchitka, AKwx, south to southeast 15, pretty light. Unmak Island, variable at 15, the northwest 20 for Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, south of Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Delta coastline into Kuskokwim Bay, southwest at 20, west 20 for the Pribilofs, north 10. 7-foot seas, though, even though the winds are down to 10 knots for St. Matthew Island. Yukon Delta coast, south winds 20 knots, 7-foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, winds will be south at 15 with 3 to 4-foot seas. Outlook for Monday, Norton Sound south at 10, seas 2 feet. St. Lawrence Island, northwest 15 with 5-foot seas, and small craft advisories along the Yukon or the Kuskokwim Delta coast, northwest 25, seas 8 feet, west 20 for the Yukon Delta coast, 15 knots for the Pribilofs out of the west. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 20 knots, 4-foot seas, central coast southeast at 20 with 5-foot seas. And then the west side, lighter there, that's the zone with the lightest winds, obviously, south at 15, 4-foot seas, and then Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. Small craft advisories, south winds 25 knots with seas possibly as high as 8 feet. Outlook for Monday, lighter winds in those areas. Lighter winds all along the coast, 10 knots everywhere, kind of a varying direction, say on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east out of the east, southeast on the central coast, south on the west side, west-southwest from Wales to Cape Beaufort. For tonight, again, stays dry. And again, eastern interior areas, north slope down a little below zero, say 5 below to 5 above. Much milder, though, as you head west with the mild southwesterly flow coming off the Bering Sea there. And chance of showers, variably cloudy, Kenai Peninsula, mixed rain or snow showers. All of it will be light, even along the trough axis there back to the northwest. And then that area kind of shifts eastwards for some scattered snow showers. Central interior, more isolated as you get down towards south central Alaska. Some clearing for Cook Inlet. Chance of moisture for the Panhandle, light moisture coming onto the southwest coast. Building high pressure over the western Bering Sea becomes strong on Monday and shifts eastward. For drying conditions, still a chance of snow over the central interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.